I'm Ann Murphy. I am one of 7 co-leaders of this Northern Virginia chapter of the Interfaith Center. I think I know almost all of you whose faces or names I see on the screen. And you're probably tired of knowing me because it seems like I've been doing this for a very long time. So as we begin, we'd like to do a land acknowledgement. As we commence our session, let us recognize and remember the Native people who were removed from the place we presently sit. Those groups likely include the Piscataway, the Anacostank, the Pamunkey, the Mattapaniant, the Nanjamix, and the Toxahents. We also recognize and remember the enslaved people of color, separated from their families and native lands by force, and made to labor under harsh conditions to build this city and much of our region. And because the Interfaith Center commits itself to learning, praying, and acting, I'd like to suggest that we take a moment in this season when we yearn for peace. I invite you to still yourself for a minute or two. Exhale the angst of your day and your worries and your concerns. And inhale deeply the gift of peace. We'll take a moment of silence so that each of us, through our own faith lens, we can think about ourselves, our families, our community, our commonwealth, our country, our very broken world, and our struggling planet. Thank you. So tonight's session has at least 3 objectives, at least 3 that I've identified. First, we're here in the hopes of nurturing your interest in what will be happening in Richmond during the 2024 General Assembly. The Assembly convenes on Wednesday, January 10th, runs for about 2 months. It's a long session, as defined, since it's also a budget development and approval session. Secondly, we hope to motivate you to be an active participant in the work of your elected members of both chambers, your delegate and your state senator. And third, we seek to provide you with the information about the Interfaith Center's priority issues and the tools for each of you to take action to respond to the work of your elected members. So who better to help us with these objectives than the Senator's own expert leader, Kim Bobo? Let's show her some loving support. You can use your reaction button or your little, silent clapping and that kind of thing. So Kim, tell us, what are we working on?
Probably a few too many things, honestly. But I think we have a lot of opportunity this year. Again, I think we're going to get a fair amount of stuff out of the House and the Senate. And, and then the big question is, can we get it signed into law by the governor? And I think that's an open question on most of the issues that we're working on. We simply, again, we're going to try our best. We're not going for anything we think is a dead loser here, but So I want to talk about the work in the main buckets that we're working in. And I did just send out in the weekly roundup that came out today, there's a link to exactly what I'm going to be talking about tonight. It's a link to all of the priority issues, and what we know about them all. You know, we're still working on a few patrons, but most of the bills have their patrons lined up, and fact sheets are available online and so forth. Again, there's a few we're still working on. So in the health equity budget, there's two that we're really leading on. One is this training requirement on unconscious bias. We have bipartisan leaders in both the House and the Senate on this one. So Republicans and Democrats. And, you know, we've had opposition from the Medical Society of Virginia, which is basically the docs, because they don't want any sort of training requirement. They think no one should really tell them what to do. But a lot of the younger doctor organizations, the nurses associations, the midwives, everybody else thinks there needs to be this kind of training. So I think we've got a very good shot at it. We've really done the work to build support on this in the last year. So again, that is, you know, again, we have a good shot on that one. And then we're working on a budget amendment with Delegate Sickles to fund these community health workers who do a lot of the ground level health outreach to people of color and immigrant communities. And a lot of them were hired using federal COVID funds in our health departments, and now those funds are going away. So if we don't figure out how to get them funded, the health departments are going to lose a lot of their key outreach staff that really help them reach people who struggle. So those are the two that we're leading on, but we are part of a coalition and supporting this healthcare coverage for undocumented children. About 13,000 children who would be eligible for Medicaid if they had proper documentation status. So a lot of states these days are beginning to look at how do we cover these children. Frankly, they're pretty cheap to cover, and the benefits to public schools are really significant. Delegate Tran is the leader on this in the House, and Senator Hashmi in the Senate. You know, again, in the scheme of money, it's not that much, but we got to get it authorized, and then we'll have to get it through the budget process. Criminal justice reform. We're really leading on two different bills right now, and then supportive on several others. The two we're leading on, one is limiting the use of attack dogs in prisons. You may have seen some of the articles that have been in the paper about how Virginia just has more bites of prisoners by these attack dogs than all the other states combined. And we're leading the way in attack dogs. And, you know, it doesn't, you know, there are plenty of other ways to keep prisons safe. And other states have figured out how to do it without these attack dogs. And Virginia really should too. I mean, the images of this is really a hangover from slavery days where, you know, dogs were sent to grab runaway slaves. I mean, I think, you know, again, that may be part of the reason why Virginia is so comfortable with the use of these attack dogs. But regardless, it's really out of the norm here. So we've got Delegate Webert, a Republican minority whip, has agreed to patron a bill for us that would limit the use. So it would say, you know, only with authorization from the warden, and only if there's a disturbance that involves more than 6 people. I mean, that's kind of what his bill will say. Holly, Holly Siebold, I've got a call set up with her at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, because she wants to do a complete ban on using attack dogs in prison. And so again, I think I will, you know, we'll certainly talk to her. We'll probably support both bills. I think the bill with some limits is more likely to be able to get signed. We did just literally meet yesterday afternoon with the new Director Dotson, the new head of the Department of Corrections. And we went through all of our policy priorities, right? And he's getting lots of word from his correction officers that they need this and it makes them safer and blah, blah, blah. And that it has a deterrent effect of other problems in the prison. We had an expert trying to counteract that. We tried to make the case, look, other states don't need these. Why do we need these? Are people really all that much more dangerous here in Virginia than they are in other states, really? But I don't know. Again, if we can't get, his support on it, it means we probably will get a governor veto or amendment on it. So, but again, I think we'll get something. There's no question. I mean, he's heard a lot from us. There's been a fair amount of media coverage. I think we will get something on limiting the use of these dogs. And again, in some other states that don't ban it outright, the authorization process requiring them to get permission ahead of time to use these dogs has dropped the bite rates dramatically. So that a couple states now only have, a couple bites a year, and, we're in the hundreds of bites a year. So again, I think there's some things we could do, and even if it's not a complete ban, that would really matter there. So that's exciting. And then we're working hard on this concept that, we ought to provide no cost communication for people who are incarcerated in our prisons. So this is no cost for email. This is no cost for phone calls. This is no cost for video calls. And other states are doing this, and it's good for it's good for the loved ones of prisoners. It's good for those who are incarcerated. It cuts recidivism rates, and it makes the prison safer. So again, there's so many benefits to this. And I think this one will come down to money. Like, is there a way to figure out how to do this that won't cost the state a whole lot of money? And we actually took the only nonprofit vendor of in prison communication with us to the meeting to talk about how this could be done so much cheaper if we didn't contract with places like JPay that frankly are making money off the backs of prisoners. So again, there are ways to do it, but I think it fundamentally will be a numbers thing. We do have a organizational sign-on statement, and I think some of you have helped get your congregation signed on. We've got about 25. We did have 60 sign-ons, but then we looked through and it looked like a lot of them were individuals. And so then Sheila reached out to everybody and said, were you authorized to sign for your congregation? And so we're down to 25, but still we've got 25. We'll get a decent number, and then we will send those around to all the key legislators. Of course, we still don't know. We won't know till the first couple days of session who's assigned to what committees. Now, again, we're starting to know some of the chairs of committees. We're starting to hear rumors about who will be on what, but we probably won't know all of them until January 10th. So no cost communication. I think we have a very good shot at this one. If we can get it out of the appropriations committee, I think we can get it out of the authorizing committees, public safety. Whether we can get it out of the appropriations committee will be the real challenge. And then I think if we get it out of appropriations, I think the governor will sign it. I don't think this is one that the governor will oppose. The ones we are supporting, but not doing the lead work on, is this codifying the oversight office. So this is the one that we got in the budget. That was a major victory this year. We got the money to start up the office. The director's been hired. They're starting up operation. And we just need to get it codified so that there's no problem with this thing disappearing at some point. But there's broad support among both Republicans and Democrats that we need this. And Dotson, the new director of the Department of Corrections, is open to having this and is not in any way going to oppose it. So I think that will definitely go through. And then we're supporting a bill that is really being led by the ACLU on second look, getting people who have long sentences an opportunity after they serve 10 years to relook at how long their sentences are. And, if they've been a model prisoner and they've done all the things they're supposed to do, then they have a shot at getting out earlier, that they get sort of good time credits. Again, it had a lot of support last year. Senator Deeds is leading it in the Senate, and Delegate-elect Ray Cousins in the House. I think we have a good shot at that. And then there will be, again, another effort to pass a constitutional amendment, something to be on the ballot for a constitutional amendment, an automatic vote, restoration of rights for people. Again, we've supported this for years. We will continue to support that. Senator Locke is carrying it in the Senate, and Delegate Bennett Parker is carrying it in the House. Again, that is one of the Democrats' top priorities. So again, I would be surprised if that one couldn't get through. Okay, on affordable housing, everyone knows we have a little problem in the state. So the things we're supporting, there are going to be efforts led by the Virginia Housing Alliance to get more money in the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. We'll support that. Virginia Poverty Law Center is doing a lot of tenant eviction protection kind of bills. Again, there were a few of them that got passed last year. We'll be supporting a slew of those. But the bill we're going to be leading on is called Yes in God's Backyard. And this is a bill to make it easier for congregations to use their land or their property or other religious institutions. So it could be a seminary or a Catholic order or something as well. Easier for them to build affordable housing on their land, that they don't have to go through quite as many hoops in terms of zoning and permitting and so forth. And I mean, we've modeled our bill after a bill that has passed in California. Now, I know Virginia doesn't like to ever model itself like California. We know that's not the best state, but it is the only state that has passed it. And it's actually a very good bill. They've done a lot of the hard work to deal with problems that people raise. Again, I'm not, I think it would be unlikely we could get it through this first year. No one has ever seen this bill before. They've never heard the concept before. And, we don't do things real quickly here in Virginia. But again, we're going to put it in. We're going to see what the problems with it are, what the concerns people have. We've got Senator Hashmi is leading it in the Senate, and Delegate Betsy Carr is leading it in the House. She practically begged us to let her carry it because, it's a great idea. So we already got the Episcopal Diocese of Virginia officially endorsed this thing, as they did a resolution at their annual conference. And so we're trying to get other denominations to do the same thing, because again, I think this will be a several-year fight on this one. But it is so in our wheelhouse in terms of the faith community. Okay, so that's affordable housing. Then what this bucket that we call working family support, there's a little too much in the bucket right now. So let me just go through what's in the bucket. So we are leading on paid sick days, right? You've heard this. This will now be our 4th year of working on paid sick days. We have the absolute strongest patrons we could possibly have. We have Delegate Gian Ward, who is the chair of the Labor and Commerce Committee. She's introducing the bill for us in the House, and Senator Survell, the majority leader in the Senate, is introducing it for us in the Senate. So again, it doesn't get better than that in terms of folks. Now, so I think we can probably get something out this year. Again, I think we will have some challenges around covering part-time workers, because there's always been problems on that. And I think there will be people who want to exempt lots of small businesses. And, you know, when you start doing that, you start reducing the number of workers that are covered by the bill. And most states cover all size businesses. And so that's where we're starting. We want all businesses covered. I think we would be open to some sort of phase in, right? In year one, it's businesses with over so many, and by year 3, everybody's covered. I think we'd be open to some sort of phase in, but really we got to get everybody covered on this one. It's a very modest standard. It's 5 days. If you have a PTO policy that allows you to use the days for paid sick, you can use it for that. So again, it's a very modest bill, but you know, it would matter a lot to low-wage workers right now. So we're hopeful. You know, we think we've got a decent shot on it. I just did. Most of you have probably heard Michael Pope, who's the NPR reporter who covers the Capitol. Anyway, you know, he not only does his regular, you know, 1 or 2 minute shows, but he also does a regular podcast that's a little more in depth on subjects. And he interviewed me today for a podcast on paid sick. And he went after me around, you know, shouldn't we be exempting small businesses and blah, blah, blah. I was like, oh, no, not even you. So again, I know what the issues are going to be over. It's really going to be, and you know that we know who some of the folks are that have raised questions on this in the past. Eva knows this quite well, right? Our dear friend Senator Marsden. One year he was great and did this little speech on the importance of covering part-time workers, and the next year he offered an amendment to cut part-time workers out. So anyway, so we've got work to do, that we'll have to hold him to the fire on this one. We've got to work with Senator Deeds, who's the chair of the committee in the Senate. So we have some work to do on page 6, but again, I think we've got the best shot we've had in 4 years. So at the last minute, we decided to do a very simple bill on increasing the penalties for child labor violations. You know, there's a huge problem in Virginia, like in most states right now, with employers in their desperate search for more workers, hiring underage children and or having them do jobs that they shouldn't be doing, that are dangerous. And I ended up testifying on a kind of obscure issue around, there was a proposal to let 16 and 17-year-olds handle hazardous waste as pharmacy techs in pharmacies, right? And, you know, people I know who are really concerned about child labor issues, you know, called and asked, would I mind testifying on this? I didn't know anything about the issue really, but I quickly learned and went, and all the industry people were all saying how they really need if these people are going to do this training, they really need to have the full range of experience, which means they need to be able to handle, you know, all this hazardous waste and so on and so forth. And, you know, and I said, look, this is in the context of what's going on around the country, that we are undermining all the child labor protections in the country right now. And we really shouldn't be doing this in Virginia. I then ended up doing a FOIA for all the child labor violations in the state. And we have 600 pages worth of violations in the state, including some like 11-year-old immigrant children working the overnight shift in a recycling plant. Like, really? Ed, I see your hand up. You're on mute, Ed. I can't hear you.
This was back, you mentioned Dave Marston on the paid sick days. Now, he and I have, and I Dave used to be our senator. We still love him. We still have our senator now. He and I went round and round on that. His thought was, I fully support it. I want it everywhere. But if we go too fast, we're going to lose our majority. And we need to go step by step by step. I think he is still, unless he's changed, a very strong advocate for paid sick days. I just think it's an incremental approach, which is not what I would like, ergo our fights, but you know.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things, we haven't publicly released it yet, but we will as soon as the podcast from Michael Pope comes out, because we gave him an exclusive on the information. But we ran a paid sick day, a poll on paid sick days, and in among 500 voters in Virginia, which is a statistically valid poll. 88% support paid sick days. 97% of women support paid sick days. Let's see if I can remember some of the other stats. 29% of workers say they've sent their child to school sick. 69, I think it was 69% of workers say they have gone to work sick because they didn't have paid sick days. I mean, the stats are just off the charts on this one. And so, I think we should, again, we saw Senator Marsden one time, like stand up and fight, literally fight for part-time workers being included. So again, I think we just are going to have to work with him on it. And by the way, I didn't mention, but I saw Marsden lead the fight on this oversight bill. I think I've never seen anybody do such a good job in making the case that there needs to be an oversight office. He was phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. So again, we just need to work with him on this paid sick. But thank you for your work with him, Ed. I think we've still got work to do.
I'm reminded that it took 5 years to expand Medicaid. We will do the paid sick leave standard.
Yep. So anyway, we've got this very minor bill on child labor where the child labor penalties haven't been increased for 30 years. And so we just basically proposed tripling the maximum fines on things. So it's a very simple bill. I don't know if where they'll go for it. But I think it is one of those things, like, since I've been in the General Assembly, other than the bill on trying to get parental permission on kids working in tobacco fields, there's really not been bills on child labor. Right. So again, I feel like for us to do this, it's the right thing. And even if we only get the fines doubled, that'd be a great thing, right? Because there has to be some disincentive for this right now. And most of the folks who violate child labor laws, most of them, the fines they're getting are $300. And the maximum, if a child is killed on the workplace, a child who shouldn't have been doing whatever the job was, or is underage, the maximum for a death is $10,000.
That's outrageous.
So, yeah, it is outrageous. So, yeah, Eva, question.
Got my audio. What about the chicken industry? I mean, did you all see the article that was in the New York Times Sunday magazine this fall? And the
Absolutely
child labor immigrant, and I imagine they would be like Purdue. It was Purdue, that they would just be strongly fighting anything. Do you have a sense of that? Do you have people kind of with their ears to the ground about how to get around them? Or I'm just curious because
even we really
violators.
We haven't on this one. Mostly we had, we'd gotten this FOIA this fall. We've got a student doing GPS mapping to find out where all the violations were, where they physically were. So we can see, are there any patterns on this stuff? And we actually initially thought we weren't going to do a bill on it this year. It's just, because in this field, you have to be really careful because you don't want to punish immigrant families who are trying to survive. And like, there's some potential pitfalls in this space. But when we talked to some national experts, they all said increasing fines and fees, there's no downside to doing that. You should try doing that. And so literally the last day you could put bills in for drafting, we got a bill in on it. So, honestly, we haven't done much work on it, other than get something in. Holly Siebold is gonna carry the bill for us. And so, yeah, so again, I would expect all the, NFIB will oppose it, the Restaurant Association will oppose it, the Manufacturers Association will oppose it. They'll all oppose it. But it's still the right thing to do. And, again, child labor it's an interesting place because it is a place where sometimes you get some support where you don't get it on some other things like minimum wage. So, okay, enough on that. Other issues we're supporting in this space, of course, the minimum wage and reenactment of the minimum wage. I think that will go through both the House and the Senate. I think it will be a straight party line vote on this one. I would be surprised if we can get Republican support on it. We'll work on that, but I'm not sure. And then the real question will be, what's the governor going to do? And, I think there are some folks who believe, oh, he'll veto it for sure. I'm not sure. Again, he's got, he wants to appeal to a working class base. He wants to get people back to work. One of the ways you do that is you pay decent wages. So again, there were some people who wanted to put in a bill at 20 or 25 or whatever. And I was like, I'm not wasting my time on that one, because that we know would have been vetoed. But 15, I'm not sure. I think, and again, that's the place where we will probably end up working, is trying to really push the governor on this one. But that'll be a little bit down the way. We've actually been a part of a coalition around childcare subsidies, and the governor just came out with a really good proposal on childcare. And so I immediately sent around an email to all of you saying, please send a note thanking the governor. Now I have to say, I got quite a few notes saying, well, I don't like this governor and I'm not sending him a thank you. And I was just like, well, if somebody does the right thing, we need to thank them for it, right? Like,
Exactly.
we don't want, this is a governor that I think he's movable on some of this stuff. And so we have to affirm some of this stuff. Now, again, it is true. We have to be careful that he's not, robbing Peter to pay Paul, right? And we don't know what his whole budget is. We won't know that till later in the month. But on the face of it, what he proposed is a really good thing. And so we're trying to publicly say that and affirm him. And as I told somebody, my policy as a parent was trying to affirm them into goodness. And I think that's what we have to do with legislators as well. When they do the right thing, we've got to affirm them up one wall and down the other. So couple other things. There are some attorneys that are trying to strengthen some of the wage theft regulations, actually trying to add some things to the wage theft law that we passed that they give us credit for, which is, a pretty strong law. They want to make it a little stronger. And so we'll certainly support that. We're not doing the lead on it right now. And then there will be an effort again to remove the farm worker exemption from the minimum wage. I would, even with the Democrats in control of both the House and the Senate, I'm not sure we can get this one through. We will certainly support it. It's absolutely immoral that we exempt farm workers, people who do probably the hardest work in society, from having the basic standard of minimum wage. So that's kind of the big package of working support stuff. But again, the real one we're leading on in this package is the paid sick day stuff. And then on the other things, the other two things I want to mention, my board really wants us to take more of a leadership role on banning assault weapons. There's a lot of interest in the network on this one. And Delegate Helmer has a bill on this, and Senator Deeds. And I think it has a shot this year. so we're going to do work on that. We are part of a tax coalition. I'm not really convinced that any big tax changes will happen this year. Partly because there's so many new legislators, and consequently there's going to be a lot of new people on the finance committee, a lot of whom have never really thought about some of this stuff. And Vivian Watts will introduce a phenomenal package again, as she's done many years in a row, trying to make our tax policy much more progressive. The governor will try and go for more tax cuts. That's not going to happen. But again, while I don't think his stuff will happen, I'm not sure that the legislature is going to be ready for a serious tax reform package this year. I think they might, because there's going to be some pressure on money. I think they might well put together some sort of working group to try and think about this for next year, because they're going to want to have more money to play with. That would be my guess on what will happen on that. But obviously, if so, sometimes things start moving and you're surprised. So, I'd be happy to be pleasantly surprised on this. So that's the package of stuff that we are trying to lead on and playing serious support roles on. Again, there will be other things that come up that, are within the valley, with the ballpark of what we're working on that we'll support, but won't necessarily do a full court on.
Thank you, Tim. Great stuff. And I hope that people have been able to either jot some notes or to make some notes about it. We'll have the recording, so we can always go back and listen to it. I think the incrementalism is probably, that's the one element that I think particularly newcomers to this work have to find a way to appreciate, because it seldom just happens the way it ought to, either morally or in any other way. So we'll be working on it, and I'm so impressed by the numbers of Northern Virginia legislators who are playing key roles in this work that the Interfaith Center is doing. So we want to keep that in mind. I hope some of you heard your legislators' names, and there are lots of other elements of what our legislators are doing. So we're almost ready for Richmond. Frances Dolan, who has been really working diligently, directly with legislators, is going to share some of what the steps are that the chapter members, some of you, have been doing to get ready. So I turn the platform over to her.
Thanks, Anne. Well, in VICPP, we know that civic engagement doesn't end with voting. And we can't disengage with our local and state officials after an election passes. So this fall, we've worked to make sure our delegates and senators know that the center is a powerful friend and advocate for justice. Through small delegation meetings, as well as public testimony sessions and candidate town halls, we have had opportunities to lay some of the key issues in front of our legislators, and also to thank them for their service and for their past support of issues that we care about, and to congratulate the many new legislators that we do have in Northern Virginia. We have a particularly large delegation. When you look at the VICPP chapters, I think we have the most. We have 9 senators and 19 delegates.
Oh.
And we are a powerful wedge in terms of moving most of the big social, economic, healthcare, justice issues. We have a lot of new people this year, but we have also run into more trouble than in the past couple of years, being able to pin our legislators down on meetings. I think we tend to forget that practically every one of our delegates and senators actually has a full-time job, and a family maybe. And so they are extremely busy, but we have met with or have upcoming meetings already set up with about a third of our delegation. In a minute, I'm going to ask Ed Kringer, who's with us, to just share with us briefly some of his experiences as the leader of the meeting with Delegate Laura Jane Cohen, who's the new delegate from House District 15, which is in Fairfax County. I want to say a special thank you to my sidekick, Audrey Wang, who is at a church event this evening and couldn't be with us. She has been amazing in terms of the legwork that we need to do to get things set up. And a very special thank you to those of you, and many of you I see here tonight, who have volunteered to lead sessions. And that means contacting the legislator, getting it organized. Many of you have persisted through failed return calls and all kinds of things. And even when I said, you know, let's just stop and wait, several of you continue to persist in working to set up meetings. And I admire that very much, and we will support you as much as we can. And thank you to all of you who, if you couldn't lead, volunteered to attend a meeting. Sometimes those meetings didn't happen, but we appreciate very much your willingness to be engaged in the process. So now I'm going to ask Ed if he can unmute and just share with us some of his thoughts and reflections on it.
Well, one, I will echo exactly what you said. I have tried to schedule 2 meetings, one with Delegate Cohen and the other with our new Senator Jennifer Carroll Foy. We were part of the redistricting. So whereas before we had a very good relationship with both our senators and our delegates, it was very easy, like with Marston and Barker and others. These were totally 2 new folks. Luckily, we had a relationship with Delegate Cohen from hosting her for her school board run and others. We had a meeting with her about 2.5 weeks ago. We had 16 people who participated. About half came from you, Kay Frances. I appreciate that. The half were people that we knew. But it was a very good hour-long meeting where we discussed all of the VICPP issues. What I was really impressed about, because Delegate Cohen is a new delegate, is how knowledgeable she was on most of the issues. I knew she would be supportive because her values were the same as these values. But other than 1 or 2 of them, she was knowledgeable about them and gave us feedback on people she had been talking to and where it was going to go. A couple of things that she shared with us that you're probably, I know Kim is aware of, that the caucus is really working together in 2 parts. As she said, one part is the feeling was the last time the Dems came into power, it was a free-for-all. Everybody could submit all the bills they wanted. Now they are trying to funnel those So instead of having 10 bills that address almost the same thing, they coalesce on 1 or 2 bills. The other thing was to try to share the wealth so that some of the newer members can get credit for being either a sponsor or a contributing sponsor for the bill, so that when they go for re-election, they have something to work on. And she said this was very refreshing for her. It sounds like it is a very disciplined program going forward, but I can't say she said we think all these things are going to go forward, but she did think all of these things are going to be at least pushed forward by the Democratic majority. We'll have to see where they go. But it was a very good meeting. We had a great time. Again, 16 folks, about 8 came from the Northern Virginia chapter. The others we encouraged to join the Northern Virginia chapter. And no, it was a great meeting.
Thank you so much, Ed, for sharing your thoughts. It was an excellent meeting. And
the only thing I will say is that if you have a chance to participate in one, you will totally enjoy it. So please do.
Thank you so much. I will just end by again reminding you that while we hope we'll see you in Richmond on January 17th for advocacy, which Anne will talk about in a minute, remember that our work in advocating for justice is a year-round kind of thing. So if you have an opportunity to thank one of your legislators for a stand they've taken or comments they've made that you read about in the paper, or attend a town hall like Joe Canny and I did in Alexandria a couple of weeks ago, do it. It's really worth it, and they notice those kinds of things. So thank you for your advocacy and your participation.
And it's never too late for any of you who are on this call. If you weren't contacted for whatever reason, don't hesitate to get in touch with Frances Dolan or me or Audrey Huang or Sheila Herlihy to let us know that you would be interested in meeting with your legislator sometime between now and the opening of the General Assembly on January 10th. I think what Ed said is so critical, because it's really, it's not so much about twisting anybody's arm to support the Interfaith Center's priorities. It's all about, we hired these people when we elected them on November the 7th. They work for us. And how will they even know who you are if you don't take the opportunity to meet them, to talk with them, to introduce yourself? You need to make yourself known to your legislators. And they welcome that opportunity. I can assure you, having done this for a long time, they really do. And I will also just say, for the Fairfax County folk, I think the town hall for the Fairfax delegation going to Richmond is almost always been held on the first Saturday of January. You have to be a resident of Fairfax County in order to stand up and offer comments publicly at that event. Frances and Joe did it in Alexandria. I did it in Arlington, and we're still hoping that somebody will step forward to do it in Fairfax County. But yeah, Ed, I'll give you 30
just
seconds.
real quick, 30 seconds. I want to just feedback on what you just said, because it's something I do with our advocacy group in the church. They go, well, my delegate knows they support what we do, but they want to hear from people, because that gives them the ammunition to take on the floor and say, I am hearing this from our constituents. Because I guarantee you the other side is commenting against it. So they need to hear the positive part too.
Right. Exactly. Thank you so much. So just for the last couple of minutes, I just want to tell everybody, remind everybody, or inform everybody, however you want to see that, as there's a big action opportunity right around the corner for all of us. It's called Day for All People. It's the Interfaith Center's annual opportunity where State Street meets Faith Street. We are the Faith Street folks, and we are headed to Richmond to meet the State Street folks, the men and women, as I just said to you before, that we chose on November 7th. We chose to hire them to do our business in the state. And you know what? We have a message for them. So everyone is encouraged to register for the Day for All People. Your signing up for us tonight is not signing up for the Day for All People. That registration, which is available on the website, or maybe Sheila can pop it into the chat there, gives you an option to also sign up to take our luxury bus from Northern Virginia. We will be feeding registrants more detailed information about the bus transportation and the details for the actual lobby day in Richmond over the next few weeks. We don't have everything, worked out now, but here are some highlights. And if you want to make notes about this, the Day for All People is Wednesday, January 17th, and it's in Richmond. The meeting will begin at St. Paul Episcopal Church on East Grace Street. It's right across the street from the General Assembly building, from the new General Assembly building, which I, for one, cannot wait to see.
It is gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous.
So that's only Wednesday the 17th is only 1 week into the General Assembly. So what an opportunity we have to bring our message to the legislators early on in their process. So about the bus, the first departure point is from Annandale United Methodist Church on Columbia Pike. Those of you who have been with us before are pretty darn familiar with that place. And we leave at, okay, hold your breath, 5:50 a.m. that Wednesday morning. There'll be a second pickup available to people in Woodbridge area at the I-95 South commuter parking lot. And if needed, based on registration information, there's a third pickup location at the I-95 South commuter parking lot in Fredericksburg. Return travel will leave Richmond about 3:30 with reverse drop-offs. So what to expect there? The Interfaith Center staff, I hope Kim will say, yes, this is true, will be setting up the meeting appointments with all of the legislators.
Yes.
All we have to do is show up. The center staff will brief us for those meetings, which will happen in the mid to late morning. And usually there's an experienced member of each group that will help to organize the delegation for the meeting. The center provides us with breakfast and lunch while we're there, and the center is providing the bus for us. In the afternoon of that day, there'll be information sessions and training sessions in small groups as part of the whole experience. So I can tell you, I mean, I've been doing Day for All People for more years than probably some of you are even alive at this point. But it's really an exhilarating day, and it's a fabulous experience. You just can't, it's hard to describe it sometimes, but don't forget, you have to register for it. So those are pretty much my comments about that. Before I do a little tiny thank you conclusion, let anybody have burning questions? I'm looking for hands up or in the chat. Anything? Actually, I can't believe we told the story that clearly, but maybe we did. We're talking to a lot of very experienced people. I mean, I know most of these people. They've been with us for a while, so I very much appreciate that. Well, concluding, I just say, you know, it's December 13th. It's the end of the calendar year.
Mhm.
It's the end of a fiscal year for a lot of organizations. And so I don't know about you, but my mail is chock full of appeal letters. So I'll make that one final
Many.
appeal. The Virginia Interfaith Center for Public Policy is a 501c3 organization. It needs our financial support, and it's always looking for suggestions for other forms of financial support. So if you have any connection, contact with foundations, with corporations, with very wealthy people, perhaps, and especially with your congregation, please remind them that the work that we do is really important, and we can't do it without some kind of financial support for this fabulous staff that the center employs. So we hope that tonight's program stirred your imagination. We hope you'll share your efforts and the efforts that all of us are engaged in. I like to remind people that in the work of justice and advocacy, it's the power of we over the power of I, not one of us by ourselves. Even Kim Bobo, who I think is a miracle worker, but even she cannot do it alone. So we need everyone to work together and with us. So I thank you for joining us tonight. Sheila will let us know when the recording is available on the center's website. And I know there are a number of people, I got lots of messages from people who, for various and sundry and appropriate reasons, could not be with us tonight. So I'm looking forward to having that link so I can send it to them and suggest that they tune in and hear the same review that you and I heard. Thank you all so much. I wish everyone who is celebrating during this season of peace and love, much peace and much love. Thanks for all your hard work.